After my aunt and uncle passed away, my cousin was taken in by my family. She tore up my books and stole the bracelet my grandmother gave me. Everyone looked at her with pity, saying she had lost her parents and that as the older sister, I should be more understanding towards her. Until the government required each family to send one child to the countryside for re-education, my parents sighed for a long time and finally turned to me. My fiancé also came from the army specially for this. He said my cousin was lonely and helpless, and I should sacrifice my own interests to be understanding of her struggles. So I went. Alone, I died in a remote mountain valley with no one to claim my body. But my soul saw my parents and fiancé planning their wedding with my cousin. When my death news returned, my fiancé suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood. I came back to life, determined to carry my bags to the countryside again, but Henry followed me all the way, begging me to leave with him. In the cold mountain valley, the sound of dogs barking echoed in my ears, waiting for me to breathe my last. My blood gradually grew cold, but my soul suddenly became light, floating in midair. I don't know how long I floated, but eventually I returned to the familiar courtyard, filled with the aura of wedding happiness. Tina was wearing a wedding dress, her face full of bashfulness, and Henry stood by her side, looking even more handsome in his military uniform. My parents were smiling, accepting the congratulations from the guests. Tina and Henry really make a perfect couple, such good luck. My mother proudly said, "Yes, Tina is well-behaved and obedient. She's had a rough life before, but now she's with Henry, so we can rest assured." Is this Tina and Henry's wedding? In an instant my soul trembled. Even though I was already dead, the pain remained unchanged, burning like fire. Every smiling face seemed to mock me. The man who once said he would marry no one but me and held me in his heart was now holding another woman. Amidst the joyous atmosphere, some people whispered, "Wasn't Henry once engaged to the family's eldest daughter? How did he end up with the adopted youngest daughter?" I think the eldest daughter went to the countryside, maybe because of that? Tina vaguely heard something, biting her lip. "Henry, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. If we hadn't been drunk that day, it wouldn't have happened." She gently placed her hand on her abdomen, and Henry clenched his teeth, speaking after a long silence. "If anyone is to blame, it's me. I did something wrong." I watched Tina lean against Henry, showing a victorious smile. The pain cut through my soul, making it feel like it was being torn apart. The door suddenly burst open with a loud crash, and my best friend Sharon rushed in, radiating cold air. "Shameless scum, how could you do this to Nancy?" Everyone was stunned. The private discussions they had were now laid bare. Tina's eyes were filled with tears, almost fainting. Without a word, my mother blocked in front of Tina and shouted fiercely, "Is that dead girl the one who caused all this trouble? If anyone should be ashamed, it's her. She stole all the money from the house when she left. Your father and I regret it. How could we raise such a mess of a child? From that day on, we have considered her no longer our daughter." I looked at my mother's distorted face in shock, not understanding what she was saying. What does it mean she stole all the money from the house? The last time I saw my mother, she slapped me for refusing to go to the countryside. She was so disappointed. "Tina is in poor health, unlike you, who has been exercising since childhood and is strong like an ox. The countryside is tough. What if she can't come back? Why have you become so selfish? It's my fault for not educating you well." In her reproachful eyes, my heart felt like it was being crushed under a heavy weight. My mother only remembered Tina's poor health, but she forgot that I was always sick when I was a child. My father would drag me out of bed at dawn every day and force me to run with the uncles from the army. I was cold and tired, stumbling and falling to the ground. My mother saw my scraped knees and only said it was all for my own good, that I needed to suffer a little to get stronger. But now, when it was Tina's turn, she was afraid she would suffer or get tired. That slap made me feel hopeless. I could only pack my things in despair. In a hurry, I didn't even bring some of my usual things, almost leaving with nothing when I boarded the train. I heard my father's voice again. "She hasn't called or sent a letter since she went to the countryside. It's clear she no longer acknowledges this family." Yes, I had no money, and Tina's classmates spread rumors about how I bullied her at home. Everyone avoided me, and I couldn't find anyone willing to help me send a letter. People around were lamenting. "This girl has such a stubborn personality. How pitiful Tina is. Both her parents have passed away, and yet she's not willing to compromise." With a personality like that, it's no wonder Henry married someone else. Henry suddenly looked at the person who spoke and Tina timidly grabbed his sleeve. Seeing this, Sharon laughed loudly but tears streamed down her face. Nancy is dead. How could you let a dead person contact you? Impossible, this can't be true. How could she be dead? She was fine in the countryside. My mother stumbled over and grabbed Sharon's shoulder tightly. Henry immediately tore off the red flower from his military uniform and shouted angrily, "Where is Nancy? Where is she?" Sharon glared at everyone but didn't speak. Tina spoke sadly, "I know my sister hates me and I deserve it. But how could she make up such a lie and make our parents worry?" Sharon sneered. "Yes, it's all fake, everything is fake, even her body is fake. Did you know? She had been dead in the mountains for days before anyone found out. If it hadn't been for the melting snow, no one would have known she was dead, and yet you're all happily having a wedding banquet." My mother's eyelids flickered and she fainted immediately. The wedding banquet was hastily ended. The snow fell heavily and the snow on the mountain was deep enough to bury one's knees. Henry stumbled through it, calling my name. "Nancy! Nancy!" He staggered, with snow piling up on his eyelashes, his handsome face showing a level of panic I had never seen before. For the first time I saw Henry lose control and panic, something he had never done before. In my memory he was always calm and composed, a man forged in the military furnace, unbending like steel. When he saw my body in the coffin he immediately collapsed to the ground, howling like a beast. I didn't expect him to recognize me. My body was more tragic than I had imagined. My hands and feet had been gnawed away by wild dogs or other animals, half of my face was a bloody mess, and my hollow eyes seemed unable to close. Henry, who was always neat and clean, held my dirty, broken head in his arms and spat out a mouthful of blood. "Nancy, I'm here. I'm late. I should have died. I shouldn't have let you go to the countryside. This is all my fault." I looked at Henry, full of regret, and felt shocked but also a little amused. "You and Tina are already married, so this deep affection is nothing more than a farce." Soon, boundless darkness engulfed me. The world spun around and suddenly a voice echoed in my ear. "Nancy, how are you? Sigh, you fainted from anemia. Tina may look weak and delicate, but your body isn't in good shape either. How could you go to the countryside like this? You should talk to your uncle and aunt." I struggled to sit up and then realized I was lying in a hospital bed. Sharon was the one who was patiently advising me. My head buzzed and I grabbed Sharon's hand urgently. "Sharon, what's the date today?" "It's January 3rd, 1977. Nancy, has your head been injured?" I laughed bitterly, feeling both relief and confusion. Thank God I had been given a second chance. With my biased parents and Henry, who had married Tina, if I hadn't still had a shred of hope for them, how could I have been deceived by the bad youth in the village and ended up dying in the deep mountains? But now it was not too late. I remembered that after I fainted, Sharon had taken me to the hospital, where the doctor diagnosed me with anemia and advised me to rest and eat properly. When I went home and told my parents, they said I was faking it to avoid going to the countryside. Tina cried, saying she would go instead. Then my father slapped me hard, accusing me of shirking my responsibilities. Although going to the countryside was clearly not my responsibility as an only child, I wasn't required to go. If we hadn't taken Tina in, the assignment wouldn't have fallen on us. "Nancy, you look awful. Let me tell uncle and aunt, and they can come to the hospital to see you." I grabbed Sharon's arm and said, "No, it won't help. They won't believe me anyway. No, I want to go to the countryside. You go help me sign up, I'll pack my things now." I didn't want to be involved with those people anymore. They were Tina's family, not mine. What's more, how could I avenge the injustices of my previous life if I didn't go to the countryside? Sharon stared at me in shock. She even wanted to call a doctor to check my head, but after my repeated insistence she sighed and agreed. I hurriedly went home to pack my things and asked Aunt from the neighborhood to help me. Now I'll show Tina how she can still say I stole money from the house. Aunt took me to the courtyard gate, her face full of worry. "No need, Tina is with them, they won't care." I looked into the distance and the words, "A vast world, great potential," appeared in my mind. From now on, this family has nothing to do with me. I got on the train while Sharon was still talking to me. Little did I know, as I left, the courtyard was thrown into turmoil. My parents rushed to the hospital at almost the same time, but found that I was already gone. The doctor said I had already left. When they got home, they learned from Aunt that I had gone to the countryside. My mother stood at the door in a daze, muttering, "How could it be so fast? It wasn't supposed to happen like this." My father immediately rushed to find someone to stop me, but saw Henry rushing back to the courtyard, looking haggard. "Nancy has gone to the countryside?" Henry clenched his fists tightly and was about to leave when he was suddenly bumped into by someone and caught in their arms. "Henry, you're back from the army?" Tina looked up at him in surprise and clung to his sleeve. Henry didn't say anything. He shook her off and Tina looked confused, then glanced at my parents with a gloomy expression. "Where did my sister go? Did she run off again because of the countryside issue? It's all my fault. If my health was better, I would have gone instead of her." She suddenly stopped speaking and looked at my parents, who were staring at her coldly. "Mom and Dad? Why are you looking at me like that?" My parents stared at her coldly with a look they had never given her before. At that moment, I was already on the train. In my past life, for various reasons, I had been in a low mood, and when I arrived at my destination, everyone looked at me with strange eyes. I later found out that Tina's classmates were also in the same group sent to the countryside. She spread rumors everywhere about me, which caused everyone to avoid me. When I walked closer, I heard her gossiping with others. "Don't be fooled by Nancy's quiet appearance. She's actually domineering at home." My classmates' parents passed away and she was taken in by their family. Guess what happened? I stood behind the woman and the people around began to look awkward. She didn't seem to notice, continuing to talk. "She not only gets beaten and scolded, but even steals her parents' belongings. Isn't that heartless?" "Yeah." Hearing the voice from behind, Tina's classmate slowly turned around, her face turning pale when she saw me. It was as if her tongue had been stolen. "What else did your classmate say?" I asked her calmly. After her initial panic, Tina's classmate quickly regained her composure and sneered. "What? You want to deny it? After Tina went to your house, she was sick almost every other day. Wasn't it because of you, the so-called good sister?" The people around began to gossip, pointing at me and whispering, "I can't believe someone would bully an orphan like that. She's still a cousin. Hey, how could family members treat each other like this?" The more they spoke, the more triumphant Tina's classmate became. "If I were you, I would be so embarrassed. How can you still face me?" I nodded and looked around. Their contemptuous gazes were the same as in my past life. Their preconceived notions made them too lazy to distinguish between truth and falsehood. Luckily, there are still places in this world where reason prevails. "Since everyone has heard it, could you please serve as a witness?" She said Tina's things were stolen and that I abused her every day. "Once the train stops, I'm going to report this. If I really stole her things, let me be arrested, but if anyone is making false accusations, they should face consequences." Hearing this, Tina's classmate's face changed immediately. "What do you mean by this? There's no need to make such a big fuss. The belongings of her parents are no small matter. If I were a thief, wouldn't going to the countryside be a threat to the community? This is something that must be clarified." I grabbed her sleeve, insisting that she go with me to the police after we got off the train. She immediately struggled to push me away, desperately shaking her head. "I'm not going, don't drag me." Seeing her panic-stricken look, the people around gradually started to sense something was wrong. "What are you afraid of? The police will definitely figure out the truth." In an instant, this Tina's classmate lost all of her earlier arrogance. Her voice softened. "Actually, I just heard about it. You're bringing up something without clear evidence. What is your intention? What do you want to achieve?" I slammed the doctor's note on the table. I was originally the only child in my family. After my parents adopted Tina, someone had to go to the countryside for support. I thought Tina wasn't in good health, so I volunteered to go, even though I have anemia. But now in your mouth, I've become the one who bullied her every day? Looking at the things on the table, the people around started to change their expressions. Who doesn't know that going to the countryside is hard work, especially when you're unfamiliar with the area? No one would send their only child to replace an adopted daughter unless they were truly selfless. Besides, they didn't know Tina's condition, but I had a doctor's certificate. She went to the countryside, and you're the one who's making all this noise? If anyone should be arrested, it should be you. We can't let people like you mix in with the community. After hearing what the people around me said, Tina's classmate's face turned pale. She began to beg me. I'm sorry, please let me go. It's all Tina's fault. I was just helping her. I looked at her like a stray dog and remembered the tragic cause of my previous life. If I hadn't been completely isolated, how could no one have known about my death and my body ended up being devoured by wild animals? Your words are like a knife, cutting at the throat of someone else. I won't forgive you because you don't even realize your mistake. She hung her head in defeat and I told the team leader everything. The team leader looked serious and warned her, when we go to the countryside, we are here to learn and improve our thoughts. Your actions not only harm the group but also disgrace all of us. This matter will be written in your record as a warning. You better watch out. I didn't expect the punishment to be this severe. She begged me pitifully. If it goes on my record, my life will be ruined. I know I was wrong. Nancy, please help me, it's all Tina's fault. I shook my head and turned away. She lowered her head in defeat. At last, the stain on me was finally cleared. Everyone knew that I had volunteered to go to the countryside to help my cousin. Everyone praised me for my selflessness, and those who were going to the countryside gathered around to talk to me warmly. The train arrived at the station and the earthy smell of the wind greeted me. The team leader immediately introduced me to the village leader. This is our noble and virtuous child, please take good care of her. The village leader looked at me with a smiling face. She looks like a good child. But to my surprise, Tina and the others actually found their way here. That day I went to fetch water and was suddenly bumped into by someone. I struggled to carry 2 buckets of water to the riverbank, spilling them on the ground and getting my pants wet. Tina's cry seemed like it could reach the heavens. Sister, I finally found you. Before I could react, Tina had already been pulled away by her mother. Her face was full of anger, but for the first time it was aimed at Tina. I told you not to come, why did you insist on following me? What do you want to do now? I looked at my mother in disbelief. I couldn't understand why she was so angry at Tina. What was strange was that Tina didn't seem surprised by this and cried even harder. Mom, it's all my fault. I should have gone in place of my sister. Now I know I was wrong. Please don't abandon me. Don't call me Mom. I only have Nancy as my daughter. The voices of the 2 of them entered my ears, but it was absurd and incomprehensible. However, at that moment, a familiar figure suddenly rushed to me and tightly hugged me. The man's tears fell one by one, burning hot and fierce, as if he was offering his heart to me, piece by piece. Nancy, Nancy. He called my name again and again as if he wanted to take his heart out and place it before me. I was in Henry's arms, unable to break free. I looked up and saw my mother's tearful face, with Tina standing beside her, her eyes filled with hatred, staring at me intently. Everything was completely different from my memory.